The personal development industry is about to collapse. Let me tell you why. But first, hello again, action takers. I'm David B., your ally on your exciting journey, and you've tuned in to the IDK WTF I Was Doing podcast. This is your go-to platform to help you face discomfort head on and execute your ideas. Along with my very caring co-host, Teresa Merrick, we're committed to making your life easier and more efficient. So when these big personal development events roll around, I take on the mission of being your eyes and ears, sifting through the noise, taking in-depth notes, and then condensing that information for you to save you time. Recently, I immersed myself in the Ignite Your Summer event hosted by the iconic Tony Robbins. And honestly, it's been the best event I've encountered in a while. A breath of fresh air after the disappointment of the last session with Matthew McConaughey. This time, Tony managed to pack a punch with practical advice and a tool so potent that it promises and can potentially create immediate, measurable change to anyone who uses it. And yet, it stirred up a realization within me, an industry-shaking observation. The personal development industry is crumbling, and it's crumbling for a good reason. Despite this tool's clear effectiveness, probably 99.9% of the tens of thousands of attendees who Tony gave this to will never actually use it, and it's not even their fault. It's the fundamental flaw in the group coaching model. Even when it's rich in content, which it often isn't, it still lacks the support structure to ensure application. And over the years, the system has produced reams of valuable content, but ironically, most of it goes unutilized. The industry is truly more interested in selling you information than it's interested in actually helping you. In today's episode, I offer a thorough breakdown of Tony's presentation, along with all the tips, tools, and tricks he included. I also highlight how you can adapt his strategies in your own coaching efforts or in your own business. But the key takeaway isn't just the information he presented. For today's episode, the key information is in my call to action. And I'm here to help you apply these tools and bring about transformative change in your life. Because I truly want to be your partner and teammate in this, I'm extending an offer for you to download his tool, the one that he shared in the event, at no cost to you. And I'll assist you in filling it out, ensuring you see measurable progress and that you actually get it done. This isn't just about information anymore. It's about having someone there for you as you navigate significant life changes. It's about countering the information sales tactic with genuine assistance. So buckle up, action takers, and get ready to absorb all the information that Tony presented. And then go visit the idkwtfpodcast.com website to schedule a time with me, David B., so we can turn this knowledge into action. So, are you ready? Let's dive in.
Have you ever started something new that you were really excited about and invested time or money into, but after doing it for a while, you reach a point and you just feel like, I have no idea what the F I'm doing?
There's that bubbling up of frustration because you're not quite as good as you thought you'd be, or it's nowhere near as easy as you expected. Then suddenly, a wave of guilt comes at the same time, and you don't really want to or feel like you can express this to anyone.
Having a dream you want to accomplish can be very sad and isolating. It's lonely because visionaries tend to see the world the way that it could be, instead of settling for the way the world currently is, like most people do.
We believe this so deeply that we wrote a book with the exact 4 steps to help.
This guide is designed to take you out of that feeling of frustration and overwhelm and lead you into the calmness and clarity that you need to reach the life that you know in your heart you're destined to have.
If you've started a project or a goal but have stopped, gotten stuck, or are starting to feel burned out, this is 100% the book for you.
Go to idkwtfpodcast.com today and download your digital copy with the coupon code ACTION to get it on us, because we want to join you and be your supportive friends and partners throughout your journey.
It's only free for a limited time if you use the code ACTION by going to our website, idkwtfpodcast.com.
Check it out today and let's get unstuck together.
All right, so we are going through the Tony Robbins Ignite Your Summer event that just went down a little earlier today. And it was good. It was a continuation of his Become Unshakable event that happened earlier this year. So all of these are just a way to introduce Tony to more people so that he can invite them to work with him at the UPW, which is the Unleash the Power Within, which is his main event. But this one was actually really, really good. And let's talk about it. If you've seen any of my other reviews, my last one with the Matthew McConaughey, it was just the absolute worst possible event that I've seen in a very long time. It was just so cheesy, so unhelpful, and it was so basic isn't even the right word, but it was just nothing but platitudes that really did nothing helpful. And this was a complete 180 opposite. And I feel like it was very, very useful information that was delivered in a very efficient way. One of the other things about Tony Robbins is he does tend to ramble on and on. He said it was going to be a 2-hour event. It ended up being about 3.5 hours. And then I think even a little bit longer after the sales pitch at the end. But all in all, I mean, it was the value that was delivered well. That was useful. So I'm going to go over just kind of a quick summary of everything that he talked about. I'm going to go into the exercise that he shared and then tell you a little bit more at the end. So even what's interesting is that between the last couple events between Matthew McConaughey, which I think had 2 million people there, and the Become Unshakable, which was, I think, a little over 1 million, 1.5 million, there were still, at least on YouTube, I didn't see the full numbers of the signups this time, but there were 10,000 people streaming on YouTube alone. And then I'm sure another similar amount streaming on Facebook or Zoom. And a significant amount of people have never been to an event like this. This was still their first, not just Tony Robbins event, but personal development event. And it's interesting because it does show that even though there's so much impact that's happening out there and these are getting so much reach, there are still a lot of people who have not dipped themselves into the personal development industry, which means there's a lot of, if you work in that field, if you're trying to make content for it or become a coach or run a mastermind or be in the knowledge business, there's still a lot of people who need help out there who have not even looked for it yet. So one thing to see is it is discouraging for us in the industries who are nowhere near or ever going to try and get to that Tony Robbins level, to see them reaching so many people with the best technology possible. But, not everyone is looking for that. And that's something that I'm going to talk about as well. And then people like me who I just have a podcast, I do one-on-one coaching. That's something that Tony Robbins really can't do. He is so far away from the one-on-one actual aspect of it that it's almost 2 completely different industries that they're doing. So just some kind of things to think about if that's what you're doing, or if you're just here for a review. Let me dive into it. So 10,000 people were streaming on YouTube. KK is the MC of the Tony Robbins events. She is awesome. She's got so much energy. Her job there is to set the expectation and kind of pump people up during the event and then do the actual sales presentation at the end. One thing that I do think is interesting is Tony Robbins basically keeps himself completely out of the sales aspect. He doesn't want to be associated with selling. He only wants to be associated with delivering value, which I think is a really smart choice on his end. Now, she also sets that expectation. So tells us what to expect at the beginning and kind of why this event is happening in the first place. We're halfway through the year. A lot of people get to this point in the year and we either are just frustrated with things, how they're going, and we feel like we need to make a change, or we set our resolutions at the beginning of the year. Maybe they've fallen off and now's the perfect time to kind of get back into it and start focusing on them again so we can end the year strong. And another thing she said was that this is the first time Tony has ever done this training in a virtual format for free, which that's never true. There's always something of it is either on the internet that you can find somewhere. But I think this is actually a piece taken from his UPW event that probably has never been turned into a digital format in this way, at least the main exercise that we do in it. And she says, when you're here, pay attention. She said, cancel that next meeting, put a movie on for the kids, stay here, be sure to actually engage because there is a camera, there is a chat. It's going to be interactive and it's going to feel like a one-on-one meeting with Tony Robbins. So the other thing to really incentivize you to stay engaged is that there's an opportunity that he brings people on the screen and he interacts one-on-one with them and he asks them questions. And if you're sitting at your screen, if you're engaged, if your hands are on the keyboard, he's got this massive display where he can actually see everyone on Zoom. And he's going to be picking people who look engaged and they look ready. So I thought that was a really cool, just kind of way to do it. But then Tony Robbins came on and he actually started off immediately saying that there would be an offer at the end. This is a shift that's been made kind of much more in the post 2020 world. It used to be, hey, let's give value. And then kind of like, hey, by the way, at the end. But here he says, you know what? This is the point of this meeting. I'm going to invite you to our UPW. It's 4 days long. It's the best thing you're ever going to see. But don't take my word for that yet. Let's give you something amazing that you can use right now that's probably better than anything you've heard. And imagine 4 full 12, 16-hour days of this. I think that's the right way to go. He starts off the event with the question that was also really the question that started his career. He says, what is it that makes people do some of the things they do? He says, there are so many people who have everything in the world and they ruin their lives. They are born into wealth and then they get into drugs and just do terrible things that end up landing them in jail, right? But then there are also so many people who have been physically, mentally, or emotionally destroyed, and they go on to do incredible things. The opposite is also true. There are people who are born into wealth who go on to do great things as well. People born into poverty who stay in poverty. But there is a shift. There are some people that are able to take a bad situation and make it better. And this is kind of what Tony Robbins has based his life on. How do you get people to be the best versions of yourself? And he says it all comes down to momentum. The rich people get richer and poor people tend to get poorer. Happier people get happier. Angry people tend to get more angry. Playful people get more playful. Grumpy people get more grumpy. And there is a mechanism of action that makes this true. And it's all about that momentum. He said the thing that really sparked his interest back years ago that really put him into the coaching industry is that he realized that biography is not destiny. Because we do grow up and we tend to think that those who have are just luck and those who don't are unlucky. And there's nothing you can do, but that's not the case. What is the case is it's all about patterns. Patterns are what control our life. Something I wish he had dived into a little bit more, but I just don't think there was time for it, is that we do tend to think we are our patterns, but we're not. It's patterns that just control our life. But the good news is you can actually change your pattern incredibly quickly if you know the right steps to take. And this is the claim that really launched his career. And it's one of the stories of his that I do like to hear because I think it's a really good differentiator between the traditional medical field and the traditional personal development field, is that they were at odds with each other for a long time. And I feel like there's a lot more overlap now because there's been a lot more studies done and just a lot more general acceptance. But back in, I don't know, like the 70s, this was not the case. So he was on a radio show being interviewed. The scientist or a therapist called in. He said, hey, everything you're doing is malarkey. Tony Robbins got all fired up and he was like, if you think it's malarkey, let's do something about it. I'll prove it to you. Bring me your most difficult patient who has something that you've never been able to fix. And let's see if I can fix her. I bet I can do it in just a few minutes. Of course, the psychologist got all upset and actually showed up and brought a patient. And he ended up curing this woman's arachnophobia, one of the two, on stage in front of this huge audience of people because like the newspapers got wind of it. And I think it's a great story. And it does show the difference between now and then. If you could do something sensational back then and act on it, that went a lot further than it goes now when everyone is ridiculous, but a good story nonetheless. But he says it's not enough to know that we want change. We want to have a system to implement the change. And he asked another question. What does it mean to have a beautiful life? A beautiful life can look different for different people. Some people want expensive cars and a nice house and fancy things. Other people want a great relationship with having healthy kids. Some people want to travel, but there is something that connects all of the different things that people would consider a beautiful life. And that commonality is that the beauty is still really on your inside. And it's not the outside. It's not the actual things or the experiences. It's the person you are inside and how you feel about them. Because you can have an elaborately nice life and still be depressed and miserable, which happens a lot. So it's really about creating two real skills to have an actual beautiful life. The first skill, which is really what's covered in this training that we go really deep into, is you have to master the science of achievement. And he says success leaves clues. If you see someone who's being consistently successful, it's because they're simply doing something you're not. It's probably not that they're smarter or better or luckier, is that they're doing specific actions that you can very likely replicate once you know what they are. He says the second skill is having the art of fulfillment. So you have the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. And he says for the second one, have you ever achieved a goal and thought to yourself, kind of, is that all there is? And you felt empty. And he says it's one of the most heartbreaking things to see someone accomplish everything that they worked so hard for and still be miserable. And so this is something he does go much deeper into in other trainings. But I think specifically, I thought it was great. He just focused on the first one for this because I think it was very practical. Let's get ourselves some success before we worry about being fulfilled, right? He really has created over his 40 some years of experience, a quick and easy way to scientifically create that beautiful life. But what he says is, I'm going to give you this info, but you don't have to trust me. Just try it and see. And I think that's completely well stated because a lot of other coaches out there, especially newer ones, they like to talk and they like to tell, but they don't give a lot of practical tips and practical things for people to do in order to try it and actually experience results right away. It's a lot of theory and not a lot of action. And I think there's a lot of action in this training that he did. So the first thing you're going to do, he says, you're going to create your wheel of life, because in order to know where to go, you have to be able to measure where you are. And we're going to use this wheel of life to create what's called a gap map. So the difference between where we are and from where we want to be. And the key about measuring where you are is you can't lie, you can't fudge the truth. And that's something that is kind of hard to do, especially when you're getting really personal here. So there are eight spokes, or I guess pieces of this wheel of life. So you're going to have to envision it. So the wheel of life is going to have 8 sections on it. So you draw a circle and then each little triangle, you're going to put, one is going to be physical body. It's going to be emotions. It's going to be relationships. It's going to be time, career, finances, and contribution. So that's going to go around in a circle and you're going to measure how you feel about each one of these on a scale from 1 to 10. 10 being it is absolutely the best you could possibly dream of. 1 or 0 is that it's actually the worst and completely lacking. So physical body, this is your fitness, your energy. How happy are you when you look at yourself naked in the mirror? This is something Tony Robbins often talks about over and over, is that it's critical to actually start with your physical body, because if you don't have your health, you can have everything in the world and you would give it all up for another day of life. And so if we neglect our health, it could all go away in an instant. If our body hurts, we're tired, we're lethargic, we're miserable, we get a disease. Let's put all of that away so that we can have the energy and the drive to focus on the other things. He says, number 2 is your emotions, or the meaning that you attach to things. How much control do you have over your emotions? Do you fly off the handle? Are you heavily depressed? Are you just up and down and all over the place? Is it hard for you to have conversation because you react so strongly when somebody says something that triggers you and you don't really even know why, right? How in control are you of your emotions? And so again, you're going to rate these on a scale of 1 to 10. Relationships. And this is specifically the intimate relationship. He talks, you can have your friends, you can have your family, you can have a community, but how was your most intimate relationship? Now, something he did, and actually, so what he says is that often this is where the most fear of all of these can show up. Because one of the biggest fears that will destroy everything in our life is feeling like we're not enough. And if we think we're not enough, we feel like we won't be loved. And if we feel like we're not going to be loved, that is crushing for a typical human, right? Because we are social creatures. We need acceptance and connection. So it's an important thing. So how well are you doing in your relationship? And are you connected to that partner that you're in a relationship in? Time. So it's neat because time is literally the only thing that's equal in this world. So how good are we at managing it? Can we get everything done that we need to get done in our time limit? Or do we tend to procrastinate or miss deadlines and do those kind of things? Scale of 1 to 10. How good are we at managing the only thing that's the same for all of us? Career. He says career, which is also your mission. And he says the difference between someone who is wealthy and someone who's impoverished is the difference of wanting to work versus having to work. So if someone says, hey, what I do for my job is blah, 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 he knows that it's work and it's not their passion. Career is the next level up. That means you have a meaning to it. You have an attachment. That means you're a lot more driven. However, the step above career is going to be your mission. Is this what you would be doing even if you weren't making money with it? So scale of 1 to 10. Finances, again, he puts this one much further down the line because all of the ones above end up impacting your finances. We might think it's a money issue, but chances are it's something else, whether it's a time or a motivation or our relationships or our just emotional stability often directly correlates to how well we're doing with our finances. So again, we put this on a scale of 1 to 10, and then contribution and spirituality. So he says, not how religious are you, but how often do you give back to your community? How often are you contributing? How often do you celebrate? And this is something that really impacts who we are in our beautiful life. So the more we can be in tune with our spirituality, the more in tune we can be with our beautiful life as well. So of all of those, if you just went through this, which you should be going through because this is a big part, physical body, emotions, relationships, time, career, finances, contribution, each one should have a number from 1 to 10. And he says kind of which area is your strongest. Most people tend to be doing really well in some parts of this and not well in others. Very few people have everything balanced out. And if we can isolate which one needs to be balanced, we can have that beautiful life much quicker. But it's important to kind of map it so you can see where to focus. So he says, now you kind of draw a line out to the end. So like a wheel. I don't love the visualization of this, but I understand people like seeing things in different ways. But so how balanced is your wheel? Because that's going to be on the car that is your life. And then he says, okay, so which one of these are you doing well in? Which one of them is making you really happy? And so if you pick one, so say you're really happy with your fitness level, what is it about this area that makes you happy, that makes you pleased? So what is it specifically about it? This is the exercise that we did. And he says, pick one and write this down. So in your physical body is that you feel energetic every day, and feeling energized means you have more self-confidence. And because you are more self-confident, you tend to appear as yourself more when you're in public to get the things that you want, right? So specifically, what are the benefits you're getting from the things you're doing good? Then you want to write down what area of your life are you not happy with? And so what specifically makes you unhappy about it? So is it that you're not in a relationship, which I think was the example in here? Okay, so this is the person where she said, hey, she's got a great support network, but she's taking care of her mom who has dementia. And she says she doesn't want to not be there for a partner and feel like she's letting her partner down. So she chooses to remain single. And Tony says, all decisions made out of fear will always bring pain. So she is making the choice to be single, but she feels like she's missing something. And that's what's depressing, to not have someone to share that intimacy with. So write down what area of your life that you're happy with and what specifically makes you happy about that. What area of your life are you not happy with, and what specifically makes you unhappy about these things? Again, the more clarity we can have on each part of this wheel makes it much easier to fix it And he says this is a very basic formula, something that he's come up with. So if your LC equals your BP, you're happy. And LC is life conditions. So if your life conditions match your blueprint, which is BP, you feel happy. So when your business meets the goals you set, you're happy. When your partner meets the criteria that you wanted, you're happy because it's an engaging relationship. And what's actually interesting, Tony, and I actually do a training on how to find your blueprint, because so many people don't even understand the conditions of what they're looking for. And they're miserable because they're getting all of these things in their life that are not meeting the conditions that they want to have a happy life, but they don't even realize that they're not doing it, right? So if your LC equals your BP, you're happy. If your LC does not equal your BP, you're unhappy. And so the relationship example, she had quality of friends, but her blueprint for her life included an intimate partner, a loving partner that she could spend time with. So because that wasn't there, she was unhappy. If the blueprint of your life does not include a partner, and in fact, you prefer to be single, then you can still be happy as long as your blueprint for what you want out of life includes that being single, right? So now the kicker is if your life conditions don't match your blueprint and you believe you will never, ever get to the blueprint and you're powerless to change that, Tony says this is when you will suffer. And in that suffering, and you will be in suffering until you can change your mindset. You either decide that you're not powerless to change it and you find the power to change the thing, or you decide that you can be happy without the thing. This is something that Tony does have bigger trainings on, probably what they go in really deep on the UPW. But the blueprint, I think, is so important to our happiness level and even just living a quality life. He went through it pretty quick in here, but it's something to really focus on. So what is the easiest way to change quickly? How do we get from that place of our negative place and get it up to a positive place? If we're lacking in one of the areas on our wheel, how do we get that up as fast as possible? This is the big worksheet that he went over, and it's a 5 steps to closing the gap. It goes really deep and it actually lists out all of these topics on there. I'm going to be posting all of the questions of that worksheet in the comments below. But I have the worksheet, so I'm going to put that up on our website. So idkwtfpodcast.com/friends. All you have to do is pop in that email and you can download the worksheet so you can actually see it. And the key is, one of my biggest frustrations with these 2-hour events is that they'll put these great tools in it, but then they give you 3, 5, 7 minutes to fill out the tool. And it's not enough time to really go in depth and work on some of these and even figure out the examples of what you need. And I'll explain that a little bit more after this. But I think a lot of this stuff has been developed for one-on-one coaching, but then adopted into the group coaching because it's so much easier to give it to a whole bunch of people. And you make a whole lot more money when you have 1,000 people signing up for an event. But I feel like it doesn't give the same quality of result because you can't really work on and troubleshoot through the document with the person. So I put it up on our website. You can schedule a work session with me. And so what I do is I do one-on-one accountability buddying, and let's just get it done. Totally no cost. This is something I believe that is important enough that everyone should work on at least at some point in their life. And I would be happy to do it with you and sit there one-on-one to get this done. So yeah, that's kind of my main gripe with these things. So in the 5 steps to closing the gap, it basically boils everything down into what Tony calls the 3 pillars of progress. And this is the foundation of the worksheet. The worksheet expands out on it, but there's 3 things that really make you change as quickly as possible. Number 1 is you get laser focused on what do you want. You have to make it clear. You have to make it compelling because clarity is power. You have to know why you want it. The reasons come first and the answers to get it come second. Number 2 is you need to get the best tools, map, strategy, or coaching to get the results. People gain success quicker, and not because they're smarter, but because they have a different strategy or more support. And this is where Tony goes on to tell the story about how he ended up finding his first mentor. It was a guy he was helping, told him about a Jim Rohn seminar. He made the choice to pay for it and ended up working personally with Jim Rohn for years. And it really went on to make Tony who he is today. But again, that was so long ago where it was easier for that one-on-one support for someone like Tony Robbins. And I feel like that's what's getting filtered out of the personal development industry now, and what really, really needs to come back. So that's one. So step one is get laser focused on what do you want. Step two, get the best tools, map, strategy, or coaching for your results. And then three is you need to get into action and unlock and unleash alignment issues. Now, there are inner conflicts that some people can't resolve. So maybe they want to have a good business, but they're afraid of success. I want to have a great relationship, but I don't want to be vulnerable. I want to be a professional speaker, but I don't like hearing the sound of my own voice. So this is one of the most difficult things to deal with that can't be done in a group setting, unless maybe it's an all-day training like the UPW, which is, I'm sure, something that they do in there as well. But so many people never even get as far as defining what they want. And many others never decide to get any help. And so even getting this far, you're ahead of so many other people. But again, finding and understanding your blueprint, I think, is really critical to helping get rid of some of those alignment issues and some of those inner conflicts. Because once you know what that blueprint is, you can really pick apart your actions that are getting in the way of it. So the last exercise that he went into is, of your wheel, what are the three areas that you want to change most? And then he says, which of those three, if you could only change one of them right now, if I could snap my fingers and change one immediately, which one would that be? So pick your three that you really want to change. Of those three, which is the most important? And then of that one that is the most important, if you fail to change or improve this area, what will it ultimately cost you? This is always critical, because until we really feel the negative effects of inaction, it's really easy to keep not acting, because the action is always going to create discomfort. It's always going to be something new that you haven't experienced before, which is always hard. But until we can really understand that not taking action is going to be much, much harder, it's going to be really easy not to do anything, right? So once you write down what it's ultimately going to cost you if you don't change this thing, what is one thing that you can do right now that will set this change in motion? If it could truly change this area, what would be better? So what's going to improve? So you want to see what's not going to improve. What is one thing you can do this moment, which is, of course, what he wants is just sign you up for UPW, which is what I want, which is to say, get on a call with me and let's actually just get this done so we can work on these things together. And then he says, write down what will actually be better once it's done in your life. So you can see the negative, the action, and the positive results of that action. So at this point, this is basically the end. He goes into the pitch, which again, it's not a bad offer at all. So it's $497 to go to UPW for 4 days of training. Plus you get a whole bunch of extras, and it's a great price. So much so that even in my last video after the Unshakable, when I first heard about the new pricing, was that it makes me really reevaluate this entire industry, because especially with AI, that can make stuff immediately. With Tony Robbins and the top coaches, Grant Cardone, Gary Vee, Russell Brunson, he can reach so many more people now, so much more effectively, that for the people starting, it really feels like there's nowhere for us anymore, because if the best people are already doing it, if you can ask AI the same questions you would ask Tony Robbins and say, hey, answer this question as Tony Robbins, that's kind of like working one-on-one with him, right? So where does that leave everybody else? And I think the Matthew McConaughey event was a perfect example of what needs to change, because that event was so basic that even if it's Matthew McConaughey, why would I want to hear an actor trying to give me personal development advice when he's not trained on that? He's not an expert. He doesn't have any huge experience on that other than what you can get when you already have millions of dollars, right? I would much rather learn from someone like me who's only had marginal success with handfuls of clients. And I'm not a millionaire by any means, right? Like I'm not a coach that's going to make you $1 million. However, the difference is I am much more of an accountability buddy who can help you where you're at right now. I can help you make your first dollar, even if I can't help you make $1 million. I can help you with the technical things like setting up a website, putting together your CRM, finding the right prompts to ask ChatGPT to get the best results, and then tell you what has worked for me when I had my first few people, right? Where Tony Robbins had his first client 40 years ago when we were in a completely different world. And that to me is a place that's really lacking in the personal development field right now. Everyone is trying to charge $4,000 to $10,000 for their products on whatever coaching or whatever system, whatever marketing with whatever group coaching. And why buy that when you can get the same advice from ChatGPT? Why buy that when they just want to throw you in the group coaching, take your money and not support you and not get you actual results? Why would I spend thousands of dollars for what is essentially dramatically less than what you can get from Tony Robbins at this 4-day event for $500, right? I think that middle market of this industry is going to completely collapse very soon. And I believe it's already collapsing. There's still a lot of people making a lot of money, promising a lot of things, and no one out there is getting results. The first time I ever saw this was I was at an event where it was $30,000 for someone to get their book published. I saw probably 20 people in the room out of 200 people sign up for it. And only one of them ever published their book. It was astounding to me when I saw that. And I realized I was never the type of coach I wanted to be, because they might be putting all the resources there for people to get it done, but they know that 99% of people never complete a course, no matter how much they spend on it. So what I think is dramatically more valuable than spending thousands on a group coaching program is getting one-on-one support. And I don't think there's anything else in the market that is anywhere near the price of UPW. And again, I'm not affiliated with this whatsoever. I don't think there's any other program that's anywhere near the cost that is taught by someone as good as Tony Robbins, that is as immersive as this event is. So I think it's a great deal. And again, I get nothing for telling you that, but if that's something you can afford, you should do it. And again, I highly doubt this offer is going to exist much longer. I really, really doubt Tony Robbins is going to be doing these events in the next maybe 2 years. This might be the last one he ever does. If not, maybe he'll do a few more next year. So I'll get off my soapbox here. Anyways, that's what I'm thinking. If you enjoyed this, definitely subscribe. And then I'm also going to be posting all of the questions that was asked in a comment below this. And all you have to do if you want like an actual digital version is go to idkwtfpodcast.com/friends and pop in your email address and you'll get the direct download. And then you can actually select some time on my Calendly link and let's fill this out together. Totally no cost. I'm really not going to try and sell you anything at the end. If you do want to work with me, that's great. I'm not pushy whatsoever, but let's get this done, Thanks again for listening. And I look forward to talking to you guys soon.